Hello. Welcome to another video for SimonsTheStamp.com. This is Kristina Werner, and in today's video, I'm going to be playing with some alcohol inks and also distress paint. So I've got three colors of alcohol inks here. I have GUMBALL, which is a regular alcohol ink, and then I've got ENCHANTED and VILLAINOUS, which are pearl alcohol inks. Now I'm creating this colorful background on some Ranger alcohol ink paper. This is the silver sparkle version. It's like a smooth glitter paper. And I'm also using the Tim Holtz blower to kind of get those alcohol inks moving. Now, I'm going over this very, very quickly because it took quite some time. But my biggest tip for you is if you're having trouble getting those colors to really move, put down some of the blending solution first, and it will encourage those colors to move around. So when I was done, what kind of just came to a spot where I liked it, I sped up the drying process with a heat tool. I just had it on the low setting. This is a dual heat tool, so it has a high and low setting. And then I'm left with this beautiful kind of shimmery pearlescent background. Now it looks beautiful like this, and in some ways I wish I would have just left it like this. But I also wanted to try using the Peonies and Leaves stencil from Simon, and I wanted to see if I could do a mono print with it. So I've got some Picket Fence distress paint here. And if I was trying to remember back to when I first saw Tim demonstrate a monoprint. And it's basically just applying paint to your stencil, and then you kind of almost stamp the stencil onto your paper, and it leaves the paint behind. So I loaded up the stencil with that Picket Fence distress paint, and then I picked it up and turned it over and pressed it down onto my background. I really just wanted it almost the way it looks right now, where it's just the stencil. I wanted just a white outline of all those peonies and leaves. But it turns out the paint wasn't quite juicy enough for this particular technique. I've done it with black paint in the past. I think maybe I just didn't have enough paint on the stencil because it didn't leave much of a design. So I thought, oh no, I think I've messed up my background. Let's see if I can wipe it off. And when I went to wipe it off, I kind of liked the softening effect. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to lean into this. If I've messed up my background, I've already messed it up. I'm not going to make it any worse from here. So I decided to use that white distress paint right over the stencil onto my project. And, if it turns out great, great. If not, I'll start over. No big deal. So I applied the paint over the top of the stencil, not really having any idea what it would look like. And then I lifted it up and I thought, okay, it looks a little messy, but it's not bad. And I continued on with the rest of the stencil. I'm pouncing that paint just right on top, trying to hold the stencil as still as possible. Now, if I was to do this again, I would go ahead and tape the stencil to the cardstock from the back, and then I wouldn't have to worry about the stencil moving very much, but this turned out fine. So as I removed this, I actually really liked the effect. And when I kind of soften the edges up at the top with a paper towel, it has a little bit of a ghosting effect on top of the cardstock. I think it looks really, really neat. And then even to make this more dramatic, when you go to dry the paint, or if you just let it air dry, the colors tend, like the white isn't as strong, and the colors underneath peek through. So I didn't lose my entire background after I put this white paint on top. The white paint just gave it an extra detail that looks really, really neat. And I wasn't expecting to do a mixed media card today, but I'm kind of glad I did, because this technique, this layered white paint on top of a silver sparkle alcohol ink background, it works really, really well. To finish off my card, I decided to use the Love You die from CZ Design. This is a brand new die set, and I cut it out 4 times out of some Nina Classic Crest Solar White 80-pound cardstock. And I'm going to stack these so that I have a little bit more of a substantial a focal point for my card. I wanted it to stand up from the card base. So I glued all 4 of them together using some liquid glue. And then I'm going to put that same liquid glue on the back of my now very thick, almost faux chipboard die cut, and I'll be adhering it directly onto my background. And I'm glad I'm using this kind of chunky uh, greeting because I think if anything, if it was more dainty, I think it would get lost on this somewhat textured and busy background. So having a nice bold greeting like this works really well in this instance. So I'm going to adhere it to a card base. And this sheet of alcohol ink paper is exactly 5x7. So I've created a 5x7 card base for it. So I adhered that using some dot runner from Simon. And then the last thing I'm going to do is add a little tiny frame around the outside edge. This is the A7 thin frames die set from Simon. I'm going to cut that out using my die cutting machine and then adhere it to the card. By the way, all of the supplies that I'm using today are listed down below in the video description and also at the Simon Says Stamp blog. Everything is available at simonsaystamp.com. So I'm dabbing on some glue onto that little tiny frame. And then when it comes to adhering it, I actually have the interior piece from the die cutting that I've placed over my card. And that's just going to help me have a good idea of where this is being adhered. So I don't have to fumble with it while I've got that glue on the back of the frame. I think adding this frame really finishes off the card. I mean, it looked pretty good before with just the greeting, but adding a frame on there just kind of hugs everything and helps it look a little bit more finished. I decided to grab some sequins, and I'm going to mix some sequins from 2 different sequin mixes from Simon. This first one is the watermelon mix. It has these really pretty pale pink sequins. And then from I think it's the flowering clover set, there's more iridescent pink sequins. So I've just kind of taken some from each of these and placed them around the greeting at the bottom of the card. And then I used a jewel picker from Marvy to pick up the sequins, add a little bit of glue underneath, and then place them back onto the card. So here is my finished card for today. Kind of a accidental mixed media card, but I really love how it turned out. I hope you guys will check out all the supplies down in the video description and over at Simon. And thank you so much for watching today. I will see you guys in another video very soon.